Prime Minister, the Honorable Mia Amor Motley, says Barbados will be moving ahead with plans to become a republic by November 30th, Independence Day this year. Since the announcement on the day of national significance on the anniversary of the 1937 riots, debate has been heating up on the call-in programs, the newspaper, and social media, with many making their views on the matter known. The Public Affairs Department took to the streets of the island to seek out how Barbadians feel about what many consider a major turning point in the nation's history.
So I think that the move towards a republic would be a good one for Barbados and other countries across the Caribbean. However, I think that more emphasis needs to be placed on educating the public, because it is the citizens of Barbados who will be affected by this change. So I think that in addition to education, I also believe that the government should move towards having a referendum so that the citizens of Barbados can decide their fate. The reason for this is because, again, the Constitution and everything that relates to it belongs to the people of Barbados, and we should definitely have a say.
It's not a bad idea, but the people really need to be educated about the pros and cons of becoming a republic. You know, it got benefits. It also got some challenges, Republican as well too. And what sort of system of republic they're taking, you know what I mean? And I think one of the most concerning thing people gotta ask themselves is what perks, if it's more beneficial for us as an island country, Barbados, going to that style of system, you know, governance, rather than it was the current one, the colonial one, which I trying to get rid from the colonial thing altogether. But we gotta check and see economically it be viable for us as well too, sustainably, because if people need to do the research on how Republican styles have worked, or how we have crushed countries as well too. So we need to monitor the pros and cons, and also the Barbados populace need to be well versed and educated about the Republican system or systems they have out there.
To be honest, I don't know. I don't know, because I don't have the information to say, well, yes, we could go in, we could transform, or we should stay as we are. But if we get answers and they come to understand more of being a republic, I guess it might be a good idea or a bad idea for me.
I still believe that people need more information, give the people more chances to speak of it before the Japanese gun. Because just say 4 months, the August, September, October, November, 30 days, next 4 months. So Japanese gun right now, it could be a slight issue. But give the people a chance, got more town hall meetings of it, you know what I mean? Let the people voice their opinion, and then they can make their decision.
I feel really good about Barbados becoming a republic, because it's not going to be under the Queen anymore, and it could make changes that will benefit the society and help it. Because if you're still under the Queen now, you're going to want to make changes, but then the changes you're going to make is not what you want, it's what they want. So Barbados becoming a republic is really good. They could change some things and make the people more happy.
I feel like that we're not ready. That's how I feel, you know, due to the simple fact that, you know, we depend a lot on the UK, you know, in sense of aid and other things. And then if we just become a republic, and we get cut off now and something, and a disaster happen, that we need some aid, we won't have any help, you know, because we're still a small country developing still, you know, and I feel it's a bad move, but, you know, I'm only one person, you know, so I feel it's a bad move though.
One of the things that I would like to find out, as I say, right, what are the real benefits of becoming a republic? That's what we as Bajans need to know. We need to hold a referendum, and we need all the information, all the facts laid out on the table for us, the citizens, and for our children in the future. Because we don't want the island to make any decisions that 50 years down the road that we regret. All right, and that won't be beneficial to the young ones coming up. But I really honestly, I like the idea of being a member of the United Kingdom. Right, in the most perfect situation, but it's something.
I think it's a necessary transition. Is one that is right on time. It is comes at the perfect juncture for us. It is about time that we stop, like Mia Motley said, and like Arabara said, stop lingering on colonial property. It is time that we move on to becoming a republic and move away from having the Queen as a head of state, specifically because you don't need to have the monarch as the head of state. It's time to have a Barbadian as a head of state to chart our own destiny, to set our own course. For Barbadians, especially for younger Barbadians, Generation Z, Generation Alpha, for them to come up knowing, not come up stupid under the Union Jack, but come up knowing, okay, this is a head of state, this is my country, this is where my country is going, and not have to find out, like I did at university, that Barbados is a parliamentary monarchy, and then like find out that Barbados' head of state is the Queen. It is necessary, a really necessary change at this point in time. And I think it is also important that we educate people on what becoming a republic means, what it entails for the ordinary Barbadian, what it entails for us as a people, what it entails for us going forward in the future, as in changes to the Constitution, that nothing will change specifically, like it's not going to become the Republic of Barbados, our external affairs aren't going to change. It's going to be merely an internal change that is driven by us, for us, and that hopefully leads to a better future.
On this one-on-one, we sit down with one of the members of the Republican Status Transition Advisory Committee, who is tasked with advising the government on making this move a reality.
Hello, I'm Dr. Ingrid Burrows, and I'm going to give you some tips on managing your hypertension. The first thing you should do is to decrease your salt intake. You should keep your salt intake to less than 1 gram a day. This is equivalent to about 1 teaspoon of salt every day. Another thing you should do is to ensure that you're getting enough physical activity. You should aim for 150 minutes of aerobic exercise every week of moderate intensity. For example, brisk walking, light jogging, swimming, or running. This equates to half an hour of exercise 5 days a week. You also want to increase your intake of fresh fruits and vegetables. It is advised that you eat 5 servings of fruit and vegetable every day. And the last thing you can do is monitor your blood pressure at home with a digital machine. This is very important as some patients have elevated blood pressures while in the doctor's office while having normal blood pressures at home. This is called white coat hypertension. Also, if you're taking medication for your hypertension and you notice any changes in your blood pressure, you can call your doctor and he or she can adjust your medications to suit. If your readings are too high or too low, you can inform your doctor and he or she can adjust your medications appropriately. I hope these tips have been helpful.
Everything comes at a cost. And these days, no one profits from the loss, like when a child is forced to trade school day socialization for screen time study, when a disease decides to disrupt our daily routine, and suddenly every one of us is coming undone, losing loved ones' lives and livelihoods, breath and breadwinners, families and festivals and freedoms. God, we feel like it's too much hassle to be human. We will always remember the years the earth spun quieter, but Mother Nature showed us how the simple act of standing still can wage war on an illness. So may we remember how to be our own army, how it takes cooperation for a community to build immunity, how unity can nurse us back to normalcy. Why stop at one family when we could save all?
And a very good evening to you. I'm Lisa Lord, and our special guest is the rector of the St. George Parish Church. He is an independent senator and a gentleman who is busy shaping the history of this country at this time. I'm talking about Senator Rev. Dr. John Rogers.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. Now, I'm going to start with a very simple and basic question. Is Barbados ready to move from a monarchy-based political system to a republic?
Well, I think that since 1966, Barbados has been ready. What we are seeking to accomplish at this point in time is simply the completion of the independence process, which is, we have already determined that we are a republic in the sense that a republic is really a state that is governed by the people, where the representatives are elected by the people and state power is in the hands of the people. We are there. But the only thing left are the vestiges of the colonial system, which is the monarchy being the Queen of England being the Queen of Barbados. And what we're just seeking to do is to remove the monarch as the head of state and replace her with a Barbadian president.
Now, what does this mean for Barbados, and are there any real benefits?
The benefits for Barbados, I believe, are, I don't think there'll be a real change in terms of where the country is and how it is perceived internationally. What I believe the real benefits are, the transformation that can take place within the society in this move in terms of our total recognition of self-actualization and self-governance. I think one of the things that we have to focus on in Barbados is that the Barbados of 1966 is not the Barbados of 2021. And a few years ago, I received a call from Dr. Rudy Webster, who was the sports psychologist for the great West Indies team in the era when we dominated the world. And he was in Grenada at the time, but he called me because he had seen a sermon I had preached on renewal. He said, but this is exactly what I was telling the West Indies team. Every institution, everything in life operates on the sigmoid curve. And if you know the sigmoid curve, when you get to the top of it, if you do not retool, if you do not refocus, if you do not set a new path, there's only one way, and that is down. And I believe that Barbados, post-independence, has reached the top of its curve. And this is a perfect opportunity for us to re-engage our society in terms of what citizenship means, in terms of what it means to be a part of a community and a part of a country, because I think that we can all admit that the Barbados we are seeing today is a Barbados far removed even from the Barbados in which we grew up, and we're still pretty young, I would like to claim that. But in the last 2 years, I think it's 2018, 2019, we've had record number of murders. And it means that the whole notion of the sanctity of life and the concept of community is waning in our country. And I believe that this move to the Republic and the resensitization of our people in terms of what it means to be Barbadian is a good opportunity for us at this point in time.
Now, you talk about moving to a Republican system. It started a while ago. Now, we had the Cox Commission all the way back in 1979.
Well, I should say the Cox Commission never really supported a Republican status. It actually advised that we remain a monarchy.
But we've been discussing it for a while, and that was back in 1979.
Yes.
Then we had the Ford Commission report in 1998. Now in 2021, we have the Republican Status Transition Advisory Committee that you are a member of. So what is your role and what makes you different to previous commissions or bodies?
Okay, our role basically is to review the aspects of the Constitution which would enable a smooth transition from the monarchical to a presidential system. So it's not really dealing with the entire Constitution, but looking at that particular portion that will allow for the transition of our head of state from a monarch to a president. We have some very talented people on that committee. It's ably led by the former governor of the central bank, Dr. Marion Williams. And what we have done on the committee is made several subcommittees to look at various aspects of our roles. And one of the committees that we have is a public engagement committee, which is headed by Mr. Suleiman Bulbulia. And that has been working assiduously in terms of getting the message out there. What has happened is that because of procedural matters with government and so on, the committee has not been able to really get into the public domain as we would like to, as I believe the public would like to have us do. But that is a matter of the government and what they were dealing with at the point in time, and the scope that they could allow for the committee until they got certain procedural matters together. We also have a very, very good legal consultant in the form of Shirley Bell, and she has co-opted the services of Mr. Justice Sherman Moore and Justice Frederick Waterman, along with Mr. Hal Gollop, and they have been advising the committee on legal matters and procedural matters in terms of its mandate. So the role of the committee really was to look at these areas, and we also have a subcommittee dealing with insignia and the changes that will have to take place in terms of, we have to drop the things like the Royal Barbados Police Force and change insignia and so on. And that is being led by Cecile Humphrey, former permanent secretary. And then we have the Fundamental Rights and Principles Committee, which deals with the non-justiciable matters, but matters that are pertinent to the people of Barbados at this time in terms of how do we see ourselves in relation to the state, how do we treat to each other, how do we relate to the other person who may be different or whose views may be different, how do we treat our environment and things like that. And that committee is being led by a brilliant young lady, Miss Sharida Granham. And I think that the committee has been doing some excellent work thus far, and we're just looking to engage the public at this time in those matters. I know that there has been some outcry in the community, and it has been my opinion too that we need to involve the people a little more and sensitize the people in terms of what we're doing. And there are two schools of thought in terms of the way we can carry out this. I know that there are those who are concerned, given the Prime Minister's announcement about the transition on November 30th. There are those who are concerned that we should fix the Constitution first and then declare a president later, which we do not have time for in the scope of time, because to really deal with the Constitution, my view has been just how we had the year of regathering, and each month was used for a different parish. I believe as we engage with the Constitution, each month can be used for a different aspect where the entire country is sensitized to these matters and we all move on board, because you do not want to have a state and no people behind you. It reminds me of the story of Masada, when we're told that when Lucius Silva, after spending months upon months ramming the desert fortress of Masada to get the Jews who were there, when he finally got in, they had committed mass suicide the night before. And it is said that Silva said, all I've inherited is a rock in the middle of a desert. We do not want that in the case of our republic. And so we want the entire public sensitized. So one school of thought has been, let's build the Constitution and then declare a president. I believe that the direction in which the government going is the opposite direction, where we declare our president first and then we shape the Constitution. Both ways are, I guess, plausible arguments, but I believe that the latter, in giving it some thought, I do not want to preempt what the government thinks, but in thinking of it philosophically and ideologically, I believe it would be a move where we are installing a Barbadian head of state to shape a Barbadian people and a Barbadian constitution. So there's a plausible argument for that as well.
You spoke about sensitization.
Yeah.
I want to look now at your now viral sermon from Emancipation Day. You did not call for a referendum there outright, but you did call for the participation of Barbadians in the decision to move to a republic. So are you in support of a referendum or not?
For me, referenda are the determination of the masses and the government together. Personally, what I've feared about this move to the republic, and which came out in my emancipation service, is things becoming political. We do not want our state to be mired in a political back and forth, especially not at this time, because as I said, yes, in 1966, there were opposition forces. Strange enough, the tables have turned. There were opposition forces pushing against the move to independence and so on. We weathered that. I do not believe that Barbados in 2021 is the same society as it was in 1966. We are in a very precarious position. And I believe that all parties on the side of this discussion must temper themselves and recognize that we're dealing with something bigger than political parties and bigger than ourselves. This is the future of our children and what kind of country they'll be living in. And I believe that it calls for some time and some sensitization of the various publics within the public, because one level of speech may resonate with a particular group but may totally go over the heads of another. And so there needs to be an immersion of the concept of the Republic and the concept of the Constitution, what we're doing with the Constitution as we go forward. The Republican Status Committee has already looked at an aspect of that and how we can go about that with the formation of a Charter of Barbados 2021, where we seek to just put down some things on paper on the Barbados we would like to see. It is not enforcing, it is not binding in law, but this is something we can take to the public that the public can then cogitate on, and we come up with the type of society we want to see and make that a binding contract for us. And then we seek to shape the laws around the society that we want to see. So going forward, the Charter is the way we're looking at as the Status Committee.
So just to answer the question, you don't believe that there is a need for a referendum?
Well, okay. A previous incarnation of the current administration would have promised a referendum. And it is up to this administration whether they wish to yield to that or not. I think that everything we've been hearing in the public domain, this particular administration never promised a referendum on this matter. And so I do not know if we need one. That will be a matter for the public to decide. What I do fear is that referenda tend to be divisive. And this is not a matter that I believe the country should be divided over. I think that since 1998, we've all been talking, both political parties have mentioned removing the monarch as the head of state. It is not something that is a partisan matter.
Right.
It is now for us all to pull together as a community and determine that we will move together in this transition and in terms of the further building of our nation in shaping it for the realities of the 21st century.
So from what you're hearing, it's more need for public consultation, perhaps
Yes.
town hall meetings, going into the communities and sharing what this actually means.
Yes.
Because there is an element of fear, I find. A lot
Yes,
of people
there's
do not
always fear in
understand.
the unknown. Huh?
Yes.
And I always say that nature abhors a vacuum.
Yes.
And once you create a vacuum, information will come from other sources to fill it. And as I mentioned before, the Restack Committee found itself a bit hampered by procedural matters on the other side. And we have to admit that the government was dealing with lots of issues at one time, and these things happen. But what is good is that we are now in a place where we can have those public discussions and have that type of public immersion, which I mentioned earlier.
We are in the middle of August. Is there enough time to make this move by November 30th?
I will tell you what I said on the Restack Committee when I first joined, and that was in March of this year. But that is when initially we were looking at a larger project in terms of the Constitution and constitutional changes other than simply the transition from the monarch to the president. And I made a point on that occasion that I wholeheartedly support the move to a republic, but I fear we may have a problem of time. in terms of sensitizing the nation in what we're doing. And then later on, a few months later, as I told you, we were not able to meet with the public in the way we wanted to. And I said, the problem is not time anymore, it's timing, where it can now be perceived, real or imagined, as politically motivated. And so that was always my fear. But I still believe that given the transition that we're seeking to make, which is just the change of our head of state from a monarch to a Barbadian head of state, a president, can be effected by November 30th, as I said, and then it will provide the platform for Barbadians with a Barbadian head of state to meet and immerse themselves in the charter that we are formulating and what we want to see as our society, how we want to see all people treated in our society, the laws we would want to have in our society that will govern our people. Then we have the time that is a total Barbadian project. It may be symbolic, but a Barbadian project without the ties of the monarch, shaping our destiny and the destiny of our children and their children. So yes, I believe that there is the scope to effect it by November 30th. That is the change from a monarch to a Barbadian head of state. But it requires us to now immerse ourselves into the community for the next 3 months, just to sensitize them to that aspect of the change.
So we're more or less looking at just moving to appoint a president by November 30th. We'll deal with the other aspects at a later date. What will change though? I know you touched on the insignia portion. There are people that are saying our flag will change, our anthem will change, a lot of myths.
Hi, I'm Dr. Adana Grandison, and I'm here to give you a few tips on how to accurately and safely take your blood pressure readings at home. Before taking your measurement, sit in a calm, warm environment. Don't perform any exercise in the preceding 1 hour. No coffee, food, smoking, or even sinus medication in the preceding hour to taking that blood pressure reading. Empty your bladder and bowel. Most readings that are taken at home should be below or at 135 on 85 millimeters of mercury for uncomplicated hypertension. Lower home blood pressure targets might be advisable in persons who have the following conditions: diabetes, chronic renal disease, or coronary heart disease. If several readings are above 140 on 90 millimeters of mercury, make an appointment with your physician immediately. Ensure to take your readings at the same time every day. We advise 2 readings in the morning and 2 readings in the evening, initially to profile yourself, taken 1 to 2 minutes apart. However, once you have established a baseline, you can choose a time suitable to your schedule where you can monitor your blood pressure readings.
Everything comes at a cost. And these days, no one profits from the loss, like when a child is forced to trade school day socialization for screen time study, when a disease decides to disrupt our daily routine, and suddenly every one of us is coming undone, losing loved ones' lives and livelihoods, breath and breadwinners, families and festivals and freedoms. God, we feel like it's too much hassle to be human. We will always remember the years the earth spun quieter, but Mother Nature showed us how the simple act of standing still can wage war on an illness. So may we remember how to be our own army, how it takes cooperation for a community to build immunity, how unity can nurse us back to normalcy. Why stop at one family when we could save all?
So we're more or less looking at just moving to appoint a president by November 30th. We'll deal with the other aspects at a later date. What will change, though? I know you touched on the insignia portion. There are people that are saying our flag will change, our anthem will change, a lot of myths.
Yes, the committee has been receiving petitions from persons, and there have been persons who have advocated that we should get rid of the flag and get rid of the broken trident. But as I said, what we're doing is just a continuum of the independence project. And so the flag still is our national emblem. The flag is still our brand, and that will not be changing. I believe there is a parliamentary committee that RISTAC is in communication with, and these matters were sent to the parliamentary committee, and the answer is resoundingly no. The flag will not be changing, neither will there be any change to the anthem. I know that people have a little problem with the line, "The Lord has been the people's guide for past 300 years," but I think that that is one of the most brilliantly written lines in the national anthem, because when we came to independence, it was already past 300 years. It will always be past 300 years. And so that line was put in there to make the point that the Lord has been the people's guide for
hundreds
well,
forever,
yes.
really.
And so nothing will be changing about the national anthem or the national flag or the national pledge or anything of that nature.
Father Rogers, you mentioned the Charter of Barbados 2021. Could you just expand on that a little bit for me? What does that entail?
Okay, certainly. The Republican Status Advisory Transition Committee has been looking at what will Barbados look like? What will a new Barbados look like? Because as I mentioned, post-independence, we have gotten to that point now where we need to reassess our society, reassess who we are as a people, especially within the changed global environment. I believe that we can all admit that the last 5 to 10 years in world history have been totally transformative, some good and some bad. We've had the emergence of highly nationalistic movements within various countries that we thought were the standard bearers of international globalism, etc. We've now seen a turning inwards, and that has an effect on how we see ourselves and how we interact with them as well. And so there needs to be a reshaping or a reassessing of the Barbadian mind. The Charter, of course, the committee does not have all the answers. What the committee is bringing is a skeletal document to the public, which the public will then fill out in terms of what we want to see as a people. How do we view our land and land use? How do we view our environment? How will we treat to our environment going forward? How do we view the other person? And it brings in those touching issues that would not have been there in the 1960s when we formulated our first constitution, and would not have been there even in 1998 when the Ford Commission did the constitutional review. Because in the constitution, it says that Barbados will, as a country, we will cater to all people and treat to all people regardless of their race, their creed, their sex. But I believe in the 21st century, sex is ambiguous in that context. We now have to look at issues of gender and sexual orientation and all the other things that and this is not the committee saying this is what has to be done. This is what we bring to the public to ask the public, is this the Barbados that you want to see? How will we treat to those who are different in our society? How do we treat to the differently abled? I mean, we've already moved great strides in that regard, because I think we remember there was a time when our differently abled people were locked at home and and people were ashamed of what they had. But now we're looking at these people as they're whole human beings. And the question is, who else in our society has been pushed to the fringes that we now need to see as a mature democracy and a mature state, that we now need to see as whole human beings who are part of the center? And so all these are the touching questions that will be brought to the public, which the public will have the opportunity to deliberate on. So the charter will just be a skeletal document which will be brought to the public. The public will have the chance to immerse themselves in what is there, and then it has to be brought to Parliament to be ratified and so on. As this is the Barbados we determine we want, and this is the Barbados we will shape under our Barbadian head of state.
And as an independent senator, you've made it clear you do not want this process to be a political one.
No, when we're dealing with matters of state, I've said it before in Parliament, so it's nothing new to what I'm saying here, that the role of political parties and the role of a government are different. The role of a political party is to decimate its opposition to become the government. But once you become the government, you now have to cater to all the people, even those who did not support you. And hence my comment in the Emancipation Service, that we recognize that the government is the government of all the people. And if some of the people are uncomfortable about something, we at least give them a hearing. And I believe that going forward in the next 3 months, the public will have a hearing on at least this first move to remove the monarchy as our head of state and replace the monarchy with a Barbadian head of state, whom we shall call our president.
Now, on the committee on which you serve, have you engaged the political parties, the various political groups?
Yes, the committee has been meeting with various groups, the ombudsman, and we have met with, I don't have the exact, I don't want to list and then get it wrong, but we have met with a lot of NGOs, etc., in terms of what their views on the Republic would be. So there has been a lot of work going on, and when the committee's report is finally published, I believe it's due at the end of September, the public will have the opportunity.
That's not a lot of time.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of time.
We recognize that, but that is the deadline we were given.
So you mentioned the need for public participation several times, but how will you actually go about that?
Okay, well, there's a ministerial committee that has been formed, and there's a subcommittee that is headed by Mrs. Carol Roberts Reefer, which is charged with the task of sensitizing the public in various ways. And as I mentioned before, we recognize that in Barbados there are various publics to which the message has to be put in different ways. And so we recognize the heavy social media emphasis of perhaps our younger demographic. And so there is a plan to have a social media outroll in terms of what we're doing as a republic that will touch that particular group. But there's also the GIS website, which has a dedicated portion to the Restat Committee and all the documents that we have been reflecting on for that element of the population that would like to have something more extensive to reflect upon. And there will also be hard copies for those who are not caught up in anything to do with technology that they can have in their hands as well. There'll also be jingles and so on that will help to sensitize the public, because one of the things we recognize throughout history is it was there when Arius wanted to spread the notion that Jesus cannot be the Son of God and he cannot be God, because there was a time when he was not, and he formed a song, there was a time when he was not, and that resonated with the people in the fields and so on, and they came on his bandwagon. So there are various publics that we have to engage in this process, and as I said, Mrs. Carol Roberts Reefer, who is more than equipped to do that, is heading that committee. So as the months go out, there'll be this rolling out of what we are actually doing and what we want the public to be engaged in. But the charter, as I mentioned, will be the main document that will come to the public at this time, because the charter will have in it something for everyone to reflect upon and ask themselves, is this really the Barbados I want to live in? Is this really what I want? And we will look at it from that perspective. As I said, it will not be justiciable. It's not something that we can enforce, but it will become a contract between the people and their leaders. And as we go forward, that will be the contract that will shape any constitutional changes that will take place beyond the installation of a president in Barbados.
As a Christian society, the church is still a very influential stakeholder. Does the Anglican Church have a position on this move?
Officially, we don't, because it was not discussed at our annual synod. It was just mentioned, but it was not discussed at our annual synod. The synod is where we cogitate on matters such as this. So that has not come yet. But the Anglican Church has been established since 1969, and therefore our role in this society is not to be a vehicle of the state, but simply to ensure that the state upholds the principles of justice and equality and equity within the society. And that is what we continue to preach. And you mentioned my emancipation service. The message in the emancipation service was really to nudge our leaders that, you know, you're here to govern all the people. And so when decisions are being made, make sure that all the people are included. And again, it comes back to my desire to ensure that things do not become mired in politics in Barbados, and that all the people are considered when we're making decisions of national interest such as this.
If you had one message to give the average Barbadian about this move, what would it be?
I'll say to the average Barbadian that what is being effected here, whether we do it now or 10 years down the road, is inevitable. I believe it was the great, His Excellency Errol Barrow who said, we ought not be found loitering on colonial premises after hours. And that was in the move to independence. We did not complete the process then, in that we kept the British monarch as the monarch of Barbados. What we're doing now is seeking to complete that process. And so it is not something new or far-fetched. What we're doing is simply the completion of a process and the continuum to full self-actualization and full independence. And the government perceives that the best move to make is to instate a Barbadian head of state before we even tinker with anything of other constitutional matters which will affect the people of the state. Let us do it as Barbadians. And so there's really nothing to fear about this move. What is to fear is if the people do not get themselves immersed in this process. As I said, I've been advocating for us to engage our people, because a republic is no republic if the people are not involved. A state is no state if there are no people. If there's division, we have a problem. And as I would have pointed out to our political class, it's not a political debate. This is something that both major political parties have endorsed. Both have openly said this is where we will be going. It is not a political debate. It is something to which we encourage all our people to become immersed. We sensitize our people in a way that they will understand the transition that will be taking place. I know that there's an anxiety about the time in which we have to make the initial move, but as I said, there will be public engagement in the coming months. If the public is not comfortable with that, then the political class will have to make a determination whether it is politically expedient to proceed with the matter or not at that point in time. But that is not for me to say. My role as a member of RESTAC is to assist the transition in the best way and the most seamless way possible.
Father, thank you so much for talking to us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I just wish to, on this occasion, thank the Honorable Prime Minister for affording me the opportunity to share in this significant moment of national development, I believe national transformation. And I want to encourage the people of Barbados, no matter what political party you may serve, this is not a political issue. This is an issue for us as a Barbadian people to determine what the future, our future, and the future of our children and their children will be. And I encourage us all to immerse ourselves in the process so that the Barbados we shape will be a Barbados that has been shaped by us and reflects who we see ourselves as at this time in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Father Rogers. And that was Senator Reverend Dr. John Rogers. This was One-on-One. I'm Lisa Lord. Thank you so much for joining.